Hey guys, it's Neil from the Pentatonic Way, and today I'm going to tell you the story of how I finally figured out the guitar neck. From the very beginning all the way to my years at Berklee and leaving there still confused, and how I finally figured it all out by just simplifying everything. So if that sounds interesting to you, if you're on your own journey to figure it out, or maybe when I tell you my story, you'll see some connection there, some parallels between your story and my story. That'd be great. So, all right. It all started back in 1989, 8, something like that. I was in junior high. I picked up the guitar. I was 12. I'm turning 50 this year, so it's been quite a journey. And it took me over 3 decades to finally figure it out. So I got a Hondo guitar. My stepfather was a local folk rock musician, and he had some success. His first band, it was the first band as Joe Perry from Aerosmith, down in Hopedale, Mass, Mendon. And then he went on to like Yesterday's Papers and had a lot of good experiences there. But his mindset to learning guitar and stuff was like, I don't want to figure it out because I don't want it to ruin the art and the mystery of it. His whole idea was like, if I learn it and I practice and stuff, then it becomes work, and I don't want it. He didn't want anything to do with that. So I thought that was ridiculous. I always thought, because I was an artist too, and the more you learn, like a visual artist, the more you learn, the better you get, the better you can express yourself, and like that. So, but my problem is, I think I could never really I don't have an analytical mind, right? I'm not gonna go in like an engineer and figure out how it all works. My mind tends to be more intuitive, and I just kind of feel how things work. Like I can kind of understand physics, how it works, but I couldn't explain it to you with numbers or anything like that, right? Or I understand how art works and how it looks, and I can teach myself that, but I, would have trouble drafting maybe, with all the exact numbers and specs and stuff like that. So that's what I was working with. So I started playing guitar, and I remember one of my first experiences is there was this other kid. The only other musician I knew was this kid that lived down the end of the street, and he played saxophone, right, and maybe a little bit of piano. So he came over. I'm like, hey, come check out my guitar, man. It's so cool. It's red. And he's like, oh, cool, I'll be right over. So we checked it out. I'm making some noise. I didn't really know anything. I knew this. I was like, yeah? And that's how I learned it, right? That's how my stepfather taught me. Like the one thing he taught me was that. And it's like not even right. Oh, wait, no, he taught me this. Yeah. That's what he taught me. Just take that E chord and move it all over. I was like, all right. And then later when I was teaching guitar, someone asked me how to learn it, and I finally figured it out that way. I was like, wait, that was wrong all this time? Okay. So yeah, I'm showing my friend my new guitar, and he's like, hey, I got an idea. I'm like, yeah, what is it? He's like, let's map out all the notes on the neck. Let's get a piece of paper and map them all out, like all the names and stuff. And I'm like, let's not do that. Like that was like the least rock and roll thing I could think to do, the least exciting thing. Probably would have done me a lot of good, but I was like, yeah, nah, that's all right, man. Did I show you this? So that was my first experience with, not wanting to, I don't even know the word. It just works with the part of my brain that just makes me want to fall asleep and my eyes glaze over. You know, like when I talk to a financial advisor or something and they're talking about dividends and assets and, you know, all sorts of things like this, I know it's good for me. I know it is. But I'm just kind of like, huh? Yeah, you know, like just spacing out. It's awful. So anyway, I go on and this was the 80s, right? 1980s. So there wasn't YouTube. There wasn't like all this information that's out there now. And so I would have to go to the music store and try to ask the people that work there, but they're busy trying to sell stuff. So I took a couple lessons too, and I learned a couple things. I learned like the shape of the pentatonic scale, you know, and I was like, that's cool. And I remember taking that, and my stepfather had the Rolling Stones playing, and it was Wild Horses was playing. And I remember finding the right spot on the neck so I could jam with it using the pentatonic scale. You know, I'd try to like cop some of the licks that were there, and I could actually find them in the scale. And I was like, this is amazing. Oh my God. And I stuck with that for a while, right? Like I just, with that one shape of the pentatonic scale, just playing it wherever I could figure out where it sounded like it worked. And that got me pretty far. And then I was like, all right, I want to learn other stuff, because then I was getting into metal and like, you know, I was getting to Van Halen big time. Like I had moved on from Eric Clapton, who was like my first hero. Got into Eddie Van Halen. He had a lot of pentatonic stuff, but it didn't sound pentatonic. And it was so fast, I couldn't really figure it out. So then I, you know, got into Steve Vai and Joe Satriani and went back for some more lessons, and they taught me like the modes. All of those shapes, right? And then I got into the shapes, and then I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. And I was really, you know, getting into all this stuff. Now, if you can do that when you're in junior high and high school, you can really impress your friends. So that's all I did. Whenever a time would come up for a solo, I'd just do that. I'd find the same idea. I'd say, all right, what key is it in? It's in A. All right, I use A major. And I'd play that over everything, and, you know, over every chord. Didn't matter what it was in that. As long as it started with A, the first chord of the chord progression, I would use that, and I would just jam on that all day. You know, and that got me pretty far, a couple more years. Now, like around the end of high school, and I started getting into like jam bands and Fish and stuff like that. And I could hear something different was going on. And I understood jazz as a concept, and some older guitar, you know, acquaintance told me about how like they play over the different chords and stuff. And I was like, well, that's awesome. I want to learn that. I didn't want to play jazz per se, but I wanted to take that idea and bring it towards rock. I was like, no one's doing that. But a lot of people do that. But I was like, it would be so cool. Like I'll jam on over the chords, and people be like, wow, that's amazing. And so that kind of led me on my journey. Then I was like, okay, how do you do that? That seems so tough, you know? And I thought, like, someone was like, all right, so, you know, you're in the key of A, so you have A major, all right? And then like, now when B comes around, you play B Dorian. But I'm just going like, well, those are just the same notes as A major. Yeah, you just play that. And I'm like, well, all right. So, how do you make it sound like you're changing? They didn't know. You know, they'd be like, oh, target the chord tones. I'm like, how am I going to target the chord tones when I'm going like so fast and trying to like make melodies, you know? So I would just kind of noodle around and try to hope I landed on the right note, you know? And I often think of it as someone said now, that it's like trying to play, you know, trying to throw paint at a canvas and hope Mona Lisa pops out. And that's what I was doing. I was just trying to work within those notes and hope I landed on the right thing, you know, by a little combination of luck and intuition, you know, educated guess. But still, I was having no luck. So I was like, well, maybe I need to learn more scales, right? So I'm like, all right, I'm going to learn the melodic minor, and I'm going to learn the harmonic minor. And I know like over the 5 chords, you can play, this mixolydian and that mixolydian, the alto dominant, and Lydian flat 7, and all these things. There's just so many. I was like, that's what people must be doing. That's what I'm hearing that people are doing that I'm not doing. So I actually went to art school for a semester after high school, and then because of the intuitive kind of nature of my brain, I was able to like see the art and just teach myself, really. So I said, listen, I'm not getting anything out of this. I'm going to keep doing art, but I want to learn music. I need someone like explain it to me. I must not be talking to the right people. So I was like, all right. I dropped out of art school. I'm an art school dropout. And then I worked for a bunch of years, at night playing and working at a gas station, third shift. And I kept applying to Berklee, and I ended up getting in, right? And that was always my dream. I grew up near Boston. I'm like, oh, I should go to Berklee. Steve Vai went there, Chick Corea, Dream Theater, all these people. Reb Beach from Winger. Anyway, so I go there, and I'm taking these great classes like harmony and ear training and composition, music history, everything, all this stuff. I'm doing all my guitar things. I'm learning, memorizing all these chords at the end of every year, every semester or something. You need to like, I can play all the modes of the harmonic minor. I can play all the modes of melodic minor. I can play all the 7 chords and all the drop 2 chords and all this stuff. So I'm like, but I'm not getting any closer to figuring out how to solo over changes, right? My degree was in film scoring, so I can play the pencil like crazy. I can hear the melodies in my head, and I can kind of, using the knowledge that I'm getting from the other classes like harmony and stuff, I can write for orchestra, and I'm doing arrangements for full orchestras and all this stuff. But that's like slow composition, right? And I want to be able to do in the moment improvisational composition, where it's like, all right, here comes the chords, just go and make it up. And I couldn't bridge that gap between like this knowledge that I had, that I was gaining, and then putting it on the fretboard, in time, in the moment, in the heat of the battle. Right, so that was super frustrating, and I felt very, defeated, and just kind of like, I just felt awful. I've been trying to do this for a decade at this point, or maybe more. So I graduate, I climb the mountain, and then I turn around at the top. I get my answers, but I'm no closer to getting what I need to be able to do what I want to do. And I get out, and I'm kind of depressed. I just start teaching guitar because I can hear stuff. I can transcribe well. I can, my people skills are good. I can listen to what someone's asking me and understand what they're really trying to figure out and tell them. And then, but every once in a while, someone would come and ask me, like, how do I solo over changes or whatever? And I wouldn't know. And then I'd try to say, oh yeah, just hit the chord tones. You gotta play the chord tones, Or I'd be like, dude, I don't know. It's like, that eludes me, right? So it was a long time, and a lot of times I felt like I should just give up. Like, what, what's the point? It's a piece of wood with metal on it, with these strings and metal, and just makes noise, and what the hell am I doing anyway? But I couldn't give up. It's so much a part of me at this point. I just love playing, and it's part of my personality and how I define myself, really. So I didn't give up, but I wasn't getting any closer. Around that time, my first son was born, right? And my practice time went like this, like right off the cliff. Like I have no time to practice now. I was working a full-time job, and at night I was taking care of, my son and making sure my wife was okay and all these things. And sometimes I'd be working 2 jobs. So I didn't want to stop playing because I knew that was a thing. People who have kids and then they just stop playing, and then 18, 20 years later they pick it up again, and that's not me. I was like, I'm just going to keep playing. I gotta keep playing. I needed to. So I would wake up 15 minutes early every morning, earlier than I needed to, just so I could get ready and have like 15 minutes in the dark house when everybody's still asleep to play a bit, you know. And I'd first like break it into 5-minute chunks where I'd do like just stuff like that to keep my fingers tight, and I would try do some chord progressions or do a lick or something. But eventually I was like, well, let me try something, right? Like, I don't know where it came from, but it just popped in my head that in harmony class, like a lot of people say they want to learn theory, right? Or they don't want to learn theory, one or the other, but what they really are talking about is harmony, right? And harmony is like the study of how chords and melodies and all that stuff goes together, and modulating keys and all this stuff. And one of the things that I learned about in like composition class and theory, harmony, is that when you're writing over a chord, you want to play the chord tones. That was correct. But you can also play a couple other notes, depending on what type of chord it is, major, minor, dominant. And there are a couple notes you don't want to play. Those are your avoid notes, right? So in my head, I was like, I made the connection that like, all right, if you're playing like C major, you're going to want to play the chord tones, which in that case are C, E, and G, right? And for a major, you kind of want to avoid the 4th, right? Because when you're going, you know, through the circle of fifths, whatever, usually you're going to be going up a 4th or down a 5th. And that would be kind of like giving away the punchline before you tell the joke. So you're playing. So 4ths don't really work on major, and you know, and it creates a dissonance between the 3rd and the 4th because they're so close together. You get one of those things. And also same with the 7th, right? The major 7th, you also get something like that. So in my head, I was like, all right, so you can play the 1, the 2, the 3, the 6, and the 5. And it dawned on me that was like the pentatonic scale. And it was the same with minor. Like the pentatonic major and the pentatonic minor were like the chord tones plus the 2 notes that you can play, the acceptable ones. Like for minor, it's you're not supposed to, or you know, you can play the 4 and the flat 7. It was opposite, right? You don't really play the 2. I mean, you can, but it clashes with the 3, and the 6 clashes with the flat 7. So I said, well, I got 15 minutes. Let me just try this experiment for the next week or whatever. I'm going to do a chord progression, just 2 chords, and I'll just, whatever the chord is, I'll play that pentatonic, and when I go to the other chord, I'll play that pentatonic. And it took me a second to wrap my head around it until I was like, all right, I'll just do it like this. Like, here's A minor, here's B minor. So I'll play A minor. And immediately I could hear the changes in what I was playing. And it was like, dude, I went through all this stuff. Decades, clueless, went to Berklee, spent a ton of money, felt like a loser among all these people that just get it. Like, I don't know how they get it. Maybe someone told them this, like, when they were younger, and then they didn't tell me, and they were just like, oh, you know, it's this fancy scale, that fancy scale. No one will tell you. Maybe they just didn't know that they knew. I don't know. But I felt like a fool. I was like, here it is right here in the middle of a dark room, house. Everybody's asleep. You match the chord in the pentatonic scale, and that's it. You know, and from then on, I was like, okay, that's all I'm going to do for like, till I really feel like I've got everything that this has to offer. And then like, so then, you're thinking, all right, you have to work on, instead of moving like this, I'll play the first shape here, and then the fifth shape here. So that was something to work on. That's just 2 chords, and then there's other places to play it, so I started working on that. And then when I got bored with that, I tried 2 major chords and then tried them in different parts of the neck, tried being able to switch position, play here, and then play here, and then play here. So there's always something to work on now. But when I play, I can hear the chords changing everything. And it wasn't just me that could hear it. Like, at that point in time, the bass player in my band had to take a break. So it's just me and the drummer. And we wanted to keep it going, so when the bass player came back, we could keep playing, like original music. So I'm just, at first, before I figured this out, we'd jam on the tunes, I'd try to sing, and then the solo would come up, and I'd do my thing where just like, like just doing that, because I didn't know what else to do. I'd play the blues. All that stuff, I could jam in a scale pretty convincingly, but the drummer would be playing, he didn't know what chords were happening, right? Because you can't hear it in it without the context of the bass below, like giving you the form of the song. I'm just noodling. It could be anything. I could be playing any song. You know what I mean? So immediately, that next band practice, I started using this. I mean, I had to slow down. I had to like how I think about, you take the engine apart to fix it and then you put it back together. I had to take my playing apart, so I wasn't like shredding. I was playing. And I'm not, now I'm much faster at the pentatonics. I found a whole bunch of different ways to play it fast and do cool stuff with it. But back then I wasn't as fluent in the pentatonic shape and making cool sounds with it. But he could hear it. We got through the solos. We got through the songs. He could hear when the solo ended because he's following the chords with his ears. And then we got to the last choruses and stopped. And he's like, dude, we got through it. Yeah, I know. So now I just want to tell everybody, because I remember how foolish I felt, how disappointed I was that someone didn't tell me this before I went to Berklee. Maybe I wouldn't have gone, or maybe I would have gone and had a much different time, and been able to play with people that that were just phenomenal players. And I knew I had music in me, and I knew I could hear melody, and I had great ideas, and I could write, cool chord progression. I just couldn't improvise, and that really kept me back. And so if there's anybody out there looking for these answers, my passion is I want to tell them about it now. I want to reach them somehow and say, this is it. This is all you need to do. Like it's 2 different things. Whoop. My little light went up. It's 2 different rules that kind of guide that. Around the time that this happened, they were trying to program robots. Now, stick with me here for a second. These like little bug robots, and like the thought at the time, the best practice was to say, okay, the robot has to go from here to there and like get some stuff and then bring it over here or something like that. So they'd like practically code every step, every little walk around the thing, turn 80 degrees, 90, go straight, grab the thing, pick it up at a 45-degree angle, turn around. That was the rule of thumb, but it was so much coding and it wasn't working. And then back then I remember reading an article about somebody who was like, what we did to succeed is we just gave it the goal and said, do whatever you have to do to get to the goal. This is like the beginning of teaching language models or whatever, where it was just like, do this, and then it would just keep trying like a billion times, just like a baby, until it got it and brought it back and completed the thing. But every time it failed, it got a new thing. So it's just, I like that idea of there's just one mission, one goal, one parameter that you need to keep in mind. And I could do that when I'm soloing, like instead of like, oh, I got to think this scale is that scale, now I'm in this key, and now I got to think of, oh, that's the third of this key, so now it's Phrygian, B Phrygian, but because I'm in the key of G, but oh my God, I don't work that way. So I like that idea of one thing, and if I could say one thing is match the chord to the pentatonic scale, that's it, I can do that, right? Now the other idea that I liked was, I forget whose law it is, somebody's Pythagorean, blah, 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 begins with a P, I think. But it's the 80-20 rule, right? And I feel like this, like 80% of what I'm gonna play over, all the chords and chord progressions you could ever play over, is by 20% of what you learn. That'll be the pentatonic scale and like all the things you could do with it, right? And I've never gotten bored with the pentatonic scale at this point. Like I learned how to play it in shape, in place. Now I'm learning how to I'm getting used to superimposing different pentatonic scales over different chords to like bring out different sounds in it, like major 7 and, sharp 4 and the dominant pentatonic. And between those things, you can play over most music, unless it's like hardcore bebop. And even still, you could. And just, I view the pentatonic scale as like architecture, it's like a structure, the framing a house, and now you can add on. If you're like, oh, I want to play a flat 2, flat 9, that's just right above the root. But you know where the root is because you know the pentatonic. So you can just add these notes in, like here's your root and your flat 3. There's your flat 2, there's your regular 2, the 5 and 7, there's your flat 6 and your regular 6. Or there's your natural 7 if you want some like harmonic minor. So learning this pentatonic stuff, you get you through most things. And then if you want to add these different flavors to it, now you have like a framework that you can just plug these different sounds onto and hang them off of there. And, when you need them, just like you do with the blues note. You don't use the blues note all the time, but when you do, you know where it is, right? So that was my journey from clueless, not wanting to understand the guitar at all, to try to understand the most complex aspects of it, and then not really understanding it until I dialed it back to that first thing I learned when I was jamming over Wild Horses and having so much fun. That's all I needed, So I hope that rings true with you, or if you, if you're interested in figuring out how to, understand the neck, maybe I can help, right? And I can help you at pentatonic.com. That's what this is all about. When I said I wanted to reach out, I said I'm going to make the simplified path from just learning the pentatonic scale all the way to the fancy stuff with superimposing it. But all along the way, you're going to learn all the different things you need to do. And I built it because I'm a visual artist. It's very easy to understand. And I built a lot of cool apps to help. I love building stuff and that helped me. So I'm sure, I help you. And I build stuff to help me that became great teaching tools. And when I meet up with students, every week and say, oh, it's like this shape over that shape. Oh, let me just show you on the tool. So anyway, that was my story. Sorry I didn't teach anything, but I thought this would be fun just to chat, see if you guys dig it. I want to chat with you guys more and connect, so I thought this would be nice. Anyway, I hope the world's treating you well, and I hope you're getting to play. And yeah, I will catch up with you next time. All right? All right, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.